You've been partnering with Trustpilot for a very long time, and how has that partnership evolved from kind of just collecting stars to being a core part of how you manage your business?
Yeah, so the partnership with Trustpilot is long and deep, and I think is getting deeper and better.
Yeah.
And the insights and the ability to pull the information out of what customers are saying is invaluable to us as an organisation. There's no doubt about that. And the reason it's invaluable to us is because we do something with it. Taking the valuable data that sits underneath it to go and then do root cause analysis across the business to actually go and fix the problems. We have a team, it's called Team 4.9, not rocket science, it does what it says on the tin. And they review every single Trustpilot review manually that is not a 5. And then we work all that through, we work that into why, and we go back all the way through to see what we can fix. And that goes all the way back through the supply chain into manufacturers. A lot of the problems that we get on Trustpilot reviews on 1 to 4s, it's often the first time we've heard about it. I think we're a very good example for Trustpilot on how businesses can get so much more value out of this by engaging with it and taking the insights from the data. And it's unquestionably been really good for us as the value of the Trustpilot brand has grown.
The digital landscape is shifting fast. What is your take on the role of this human trust in this kind of increasingly automated and AI kind of driven market?
When AI is searching the data for you as a customer, what will it be searching for? It will be searching for the right product, the speed and flexibility and convenience of delivery, the execution of that delivery, and the reputation and the results that go with that. I think a platform like Trustpilot is incredibly valuable for AI.
So if you had to summarise the impact of Trustpilot on AO in just one sentence, what would it be?
I would say it's a gift, because it keeps us honest, it forces disciplines that we have anyway, but it forces us, and it makes things ever better for customers. And if we're doing things ever better for customers, we'll have a long and bright, happy future.